Hello, I'm back. You've sowed seeds in the last session we did, and now we've got some seedlings that have just come up. I sowed these a fortnight ago. I just left them outside, and so they were a little bit slower to germinate. And I was talking about a seed having a food source that would feed that little embryo, and we call that a cotyledon leaf. It's this leaf here, the little heart-shaped leaf. That is going to be different from the leaves when the plants start to grow. Now I happen to have some cauliflower snowdrop here, and what we want to do with that 150 odd seedlings is put them out into some punnets to grow them to a bigger size, ready to transplant, much like you would buy from a garden center. Now I'm going to use the same potting mix, but I'm not going to worry about sieving it this time, because we'll transplant into it and it'll go directly out into the garden. And again, this mix is bark and pumice, has some dolomite lime to give it calcium and bring the pH up a bit, because bark can be a little bit acidic. And it also has a slow release organic fertilizer, so that'll feed the seedlings once they get their new leaves. At the moment, that seedling's growing off everything it had stored in that cotyledon leaf. Now what we want to do is lift out, just like we're lifting a piece of nice pie, a little clump of seedlings. And you can see it's got one of them's got a very long root. I'm just going to pinch that to make it easier to get in. I'm going to handle it by the leaves, just like a butterfly. You don't want to squeeze too much or the wing comes off. So what I'm going to do is pick it up, do as little damage as possible, make a hole with what I call my dibbler, put it in right up to those cotyledon leaves, because that little piece of stem, which we call the hypercotyl, will actually grow roots right up to there. And just a little bit of firming as I go, so it's what I call a 1, 2, 3 process. 1, get a seedling. 2, make a hole. 3, firm it in. Don't leave the seedlings out, because those roots don't want to dry out. Really, the plant doesn't enjoy being lifted out and transplanted, so you make it all quick. And that's the process they call pricking out. It's very traditional. That's how we've been raising seedlings for the last 200 years. Late last century, we finally mechanized the industry, and we developed something called the plug system. So here's a kind of like a waffle tray, and it's got 200 cells in this case. And this is perpetual spinach. Because they grow as a little clump, we've sown multiple seeds in. And that's got 200 beautiful plants ready to either transplant out into the garden. And if you're growing things for punnets, as some of the commercial nurseries do, you would transplant these into bigger pots. So the germination occurs there, and they use a vacuum seeder to pick up a little seed and deliver it to that cell. They put it in a germination room that's exactly the right temperature. You don't physically move trays around. Everything comes out on rolling benches, and they roll them out to a greenhouse. They grow them for about 3 to 4 weeks. Then they roll out and come to people like me. So I've been growing a lot of seedlings on, and I just transplanted these into bigger cells, and it really is fun. Now I'm going to use a bigger dibble. This dibble's came off of a trowel that wasn't very good, and so I made it into a larger dibble. And here's another large dibble. Used to be a Sharpie pin. So whatever works for you. And the idea is that you make a hole and you drop it in. And you'll find that I can work at a pace that's about double what I did in that one. So you increase the productivity of this job of transplanting, and you can do really this way twice as much. The commercial people go a step further, and they have these in trays. They go through a conveyor belt, and a machine comes down, and it's a dibble press comes down. So they have pre-dibbled holes, And by using this technique, I can use 2 hands instead of 1. I even have plug poppers which help loosen the roots out, so you can pick up 2 at once and use 2 hands. Here's a red cabbage, the last one was a green cabbage. So I'm just really dropping it in that hole. The beauty of this is not only the speed, but there's little transplant shock, none at all really, because no roots are disturbed. And basically they just keep growing immediately, whereas these will take a few days to recover and get their roots established again. These immediately grow. Those will be ready to plant out in the garden in 3 weeks, or selling if you like. So that's pricking out the old-fashioned way, which is probably what you're going to do when you're not doing quantities. But when you get to a more commercial scale, you can do your lettuces, pak choy, parsley is a great one. All of these things can be done from plugs, and these are just some leftovers that I had. You'll be pricking some of these out into pots, as well as some of those, when we're all allowed to get together again. Thank you, and we'll see you at the center.